Periodically, you will need to create a dynamic SQL statement and execute that dynamic SQL statement with the execute SQL task. And I want to show you how to do that in SSIS. It's actually fairly simple, provided you understand expressions and variables and how to actually create all of this. So I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to just go ahead and create an empty package. And what we're going to do is do a mixture of all of these. So I'm going to show you first off how to just do plain dynamic SQL using the execute SQL task and a variable. And then we'll come back and we'll mix it up with a variable and an expression. So I guess the first thing I need is a variable. So I'm going to call this my SQL statement, and I'm going to make it a string. And let's just make sure everybody can see. Pretty simple. Important here, I need to make that at a package scope level because I want to be able to pass this between tasks. I want various tasks to be able to change this or to view the contents. And so my first step would be to I'm going to use a script task. And so my script task is to create the SQL statement. And let's go ahead and bring that in. What do you want to do? You want to do C# VB? I think I did VB the last one. I'll do C# this one. I'll bring in my given statement. So there's my given SQL statement variable. And let's see. Let's go to AdventureWorks. And let's say in the AdventureWorks 2008 database, let's say select count star from sales dot, this you can find a whole bunch of stuff in there, OH, where OH dot, and let's just get like a date here, order date, or where the order date greater than a given date, like January 1 of this year, which actually should be 0. I think these are like in 2004, 2005. So let's see, 2003, 2002. So yeah, 2001 through 2004 looks like we've got a bunch of data in here. So let's do this. Let's dynamically come up with some kind of a statement like this. So let's say here in the project, in our script, let's get a variable here, filter date, we'll call it filter date equals date time dot now dot add years, and let's see, this is 2009 as I record this, so I'll take away 7 years and we'll see what we get. Okay, so I want to, that's going to just subtract, in case you're not familiar with .NET, takes today's date at the time of execution and it subtracts 7 years. And I want to come up with a filter here, and so, what could my filter, my SQL statement be? So I will use a string builder class equals a new string builder. And string builder is not actually imported or used here, so I need to actually go up and do a directive. So I say using system.text. Those of you that are VB people, you know that you would say imports system.text up in the imports. And so I now say sb.append, and I'd say select count star from sales.sales order header, and a new line sb.append format, and where order date greater than, and then I would put in filter date. And just to make sure everybody can see what I've done here, so the string builder class, I don't want to get into the mutability of strings in .NET and how that works, but this is an efficient way to create a string that would actually span multiple lines. It's a fairly readable, fairly standardized way to do this. this little tokenized string that you see here, that's basically saying take the first argument after the double quotes have ended here and simply put that in there at runtime. So when this string is evaluated at runtime, the bracket 0 bracket will be replaced with whatever the value of the filter date is. Fairly common way to do things. And now I just need to assign the value of my variable to be, what did I call it? SQL statement. I need to think about it. To be equal to the toString, because we want this to be a string. And so when we take the toString, it says select count star from sales where order date greater than whatever the filter date is. Okay. And just so that you can see this, let's go ahead and do, I just thought we may as well take a look at it using a message box here, and we'll just take a look at the SQL statement. So that's all we really have in here for the time being. We haven't wired it up to an execute SQL task. When we run this, you can see that it brings in this given date. Okay, and so this is a fine little SQL statement. It's going to return a single column, single row that returns the number of rows in that particular table. Okay, nothing spectacular. But it does show us how we can do dynamic SQL. So I could now come over to my execute SQL task, have it then execute. So I make my connection to my SQL server, and I need to use the AdventureWorks database 2008. I'm cycling through with a little wheel on my mouse there. And the statement source is from a variable this time. And so my source variable then would be the user SQL statement. Okay. Not really a whole lot to show. Let me actually take out the message box in my C# code down here, because I don't want that to come into play. We would never use that in a production environment. And I just did a VB comment. And I'm sure some of you guys that have to work with the multiple languages are quite familiar with why I do that. Okay, so there's really no outward way to view this, but we do know that it is running the given statement. Okay, so it is actually running. We could launch Profiler, and so we could let's just pull up SQL Server Profiler. I hadn't done it in a while, so I'll go under my SQL Server Performance Tools and hook up just to show you what we're actually executing. So let me wire it up, and I'm just going to say okay, go, and run my package. And the profiler shows us that, yep, it's exactly running what you said. It's going back 7 years and just simply running that particular statement. So the profiler utility, in case you're not familiar, it's like a SQL Server sniffer. Right, so it allows you to see all the text and all of the statements that applications or users are issuing against your SQL Server. So we can see that this application was that particular package using this connection. So you kind of get a basic idea of how to view that. I don't want to go into using the variables and tracking all that in the execute SQL task, so I think that's sufficient. Now, the second part here is we can actually change this up a little bit. So we don't have to just be tied to using .NET, for example, to generate our dynamic SQL. We can do a mixture of expressions and variables. We can do a lot of different things here. Now, before I go on, it occurs to me that I've been using that term dynamic SQL and kind of assuming that we were on the same page. Dynamic SQL has maybe one definitive explanation and maybe some other colloquialisms, if you will. Typically, when we talk about the concept of dynamic SQL, we're doing something like this: declare s set as equal select star from, pick a table, And we could either use exec or SP execute SQL. And so, it allows us to dynamically create a SQL table. I think there's one called error log, or maybe it's event log or something. Yeah, error log. So you could see that depending on what I type in here, the actual execution comes down here. This is true dynamic SQL, where in the SQL language, you are piecing this together to create a dynamic SQL. I was using the term to do the exact same thing, however, just simply creating it in, what do we use, C#. Okay, so it's the same concept, but I think that this would probably more accurately be termed ad hoc SQL, because in a sense it is already pre-compiled by the time it gets to the execute SQL task. So you might see or be familiar with these terms, dynamic SQL and ad hoc SQL. Ad hoc SQL simply means a statement that SQL Server is running that is not pre-compiled, meaning that it's not a stored procedure, a function, or a view. It's something that you are passing in that SQL Server doesn't know about yet. It's not a statement that it already has built into a routine or a module already. Anyway, kind of getting sidetracked. I wanted to show you here how you can change your connection managers on the fly using the execute SQL task as well. So like for example, let's make a new OLADB connection. And let's now, again, I'll use the local host, but I'll use a different database here. So AdventureWorks LT. So now, when I come to my execute SQL test, and actually I don't even know if that database has one of those. Let me go check and make sure. The LT version is the light version because the AdventureWorks database to a lot of people has, it's a very normalized structure and can be considered confusing. The LT is more of a light copy. So you can see it's actually sales LT. And I don't want to change the table name. So let's do this. Let's just, we'll run this exact same query in the AdventureWorks. So there's two copies of the same basic database. However, the 2008 version has certain items to highlight, things like file stream and other parts of SQL Server 2008. So let's come back over here and let me change that to, let me delete that one actually, make a new connection and change it to that AdventureWorks. Oops, sorry. Okay, so now I'm using one copy is the AdventureWorks 2008 database. It's called AdventureWorks 2008-1. And the second copy is using the AdventureWorks database. I sincerely doubt that the results will be different, but in the profiler utility, we will be able to see which connection manager that it was using. So previously we were using the AdventureWorks 2008-1 when it ran. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to now I'm going to go to the execute SQL task, go to the properties, and go to my expressions. And in my expression now, I'm going to tell it which connection manager to use. Okay, so now I have to simply find, where is it? Where's the thing here? I just have to find the connection manager. Here it is, connection. And I have to pass in this value here. That's the name of the connection that I want it to take a look at and actually use. So, and if you get a little bit confused here, you can come over here to the properties, you find the connection, and then you see how that actually works. So that's all you're doing. You're taking a property over here, and you're going to change the value using the expression at runtime. So go back over here. Let me change the connection. And if you know what to type in, you can do it here, or if you're comfortable with the expression builder, now you could just come down here. This is a string, so I have to start with my double quotes. So localhost.adventureworks. And I just am matching this right here. Okay, that's what I want to do. And when I evaluate the expression, it comes back successful. And let's go ahead and execute our package now. Take a look in the SQL Server Profiler. See that it did run our query. And when we scroll to the application name, what's it going to say? Is it going to say 2008? Well, nope. You can see that we were successful in changing the connection manager at runtime. So the expressions can really be flexible. I will say that I have somewhat crippled this to be fair. I've crippled this in that, generally speaking, if we're going to make changes like which connection manager to use, we would actually use a script task to make decisions and then assign the values of the expressions using C# or Visual Basic in a script task. And so the reason that I'm kind of hampering this here is that we have a whole chapter for working with .NET and doing specifically those things in Chapter 7. So we're going to talk about how to do all of that kind of stuff in Chapter 7, how to change things on the fly, how to access other tasks, assign properties to tasks using .NET on the fly. But I think for now you've got a good idea of how this works.